Alright everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. Once again, my name's Scott Carter. I'm a licensed therapist. One of the things that I specialize in is high conflict custody and divorce. It's frankly not a fun thing to specialize in. It's just not, because it's like it's a lot of these situations are very disheartening, really discouraging. It's difficult to try and find some working solutions for people sometimes. While at the same time, trying to help the kiddos involved and knowing that they're just going to go through hard things. Family court continues to fail families. They just do. I mean, it is a joke. If you're new to my channel, I detest the family court system, but that's not something I'm going to get into here. So if you like my content, if you find my content good and useful and positive, you can help me out. You can hit the tip jar. Its link is down below. If you would like to submit a question for me to do some videos on, you can, again, check out my email address in the description below. If you'd like some personal consultation, that's an option too. Again, all of that is in the description. So the question that I basically got and that I'm responding to, once again, thank you for the interactions, and thank you for the ideas for what it is that people really need help with. So today I'm going to talk about how if you send a kiddo off to be with a high conflict parent, again, may or may not have borderline or narcissistic personality disorder, may be antisocial. But what people actually report to me, and I've heard this more times than I can count actually, is when the kid comes back to the parent, to the, from the high conflict parent's house, they tend to be in a pretty anxious state. They're pretty frantic. They're irritable. And kids are going to be sometimes irritable and frantic and anxious leading up to going to the high conflict parents' home for, the week or the 2 weeks. And I'm really accustomed to seeing the protective parent or the apologetic parent. They are often really anxious to limit the time as much as possible with that high conflict parent. And often for good reasons. I don't blame them at all for that. But my take on the situation is, if you are overtly trying to restrict the time that they have with the difficult parent, with a high conflict parent, the high conflict parent is going to more aggressively work to increase their amount of time. Again, their goal is not to find the best outcome for the kids. Their goal is to win. They don't perceive a co-parenting situation where they think, hey, we can do good things for this kiddo. We need to find what's best for this kid. They don't think that way. They think in terms of winning, beating you. And so if their goal is to harm you even, and if they're perfectly fine with weaponizing the children against you, you have to think in that way, right? So if you try and say, well, I'm trying to restrict the amount of time that parent has, they're going to come at you hard in terms of trying to get more parent time. So one of my co-parenting rules really has to do with decreasing your overt and front end resistance. It just emboldens them. It puts wind in their sails. It's kind of their Gatorade. But let's get into this. Okay, so the kid goes off to the difficult parent's home. They come back and they're kind of in a frantic state, and maybe they're irritable. Maybe they're more panicky. They're just more difficult, and so there's probably kind of those incidents too where maybe you're butting heads with them, or maybe they're shutting down or melting down, and compared to also that their general state is heightened as well. So not only are their struggles higher, like the acute moments are more acute, but their overall homeostasis is elevated as well. So here is some quick and dirty ideas and on how to help the child. Now, I'm a big firm believer that as a parent, or maybe as a step parent, there's a lot that you can personally do. Work on yourself. So the apologetic parent tends to be so focused on everybody else and not themselves. And I talk about this all the time. It's so important for you to manage your own anxiety. So I'm just going to go through this, okay? First of all, one of the ways that you can help them is by modeling, right? Manage your own anxiety, remaining calm, and don't react, okay? Try to be non-reactive. What doesn't help is if the kid comes home in this frantic state and they're like, oh, dad said he's going to take you to court. And you're like, oh, did he really? Oh my gosh, And you're both like, ah, and you both become frantic, right? That just makes the situation 10 times worse. And so even if the child is frantic, and even if the more frantic they become, the more calm you should seek to be. And the calmer you are, and remaining calm should also come with some of these other ones like verbal reassurance and validation, right here. And so that kind of leads me to my next point here, right? And it's good listening. Now, I work with a lot of parents, and when I work with a kid or a teenager, I always integrate the parents as much as humanly possible. And it's just far more effective. So even though I am very, very fond of many of the parents that I work with, truth be told, as much as I like them and as much as I like there are so many good parents, they're just frankly not good listeners. They're in fact quite terrible at it. You don't listen with your mouth. And what happens is if you're not managing your own anxiety, you're going to struggle to listen. This is why I tell the apologetic parent, self-care. Manage your own anxiety. I'm a big proponent, advocate of meditation, coping skills. Go exercise. Go to yoga. Spend time with friends. And I know that the more anxious you are, the more it seems like you have to devote all of your time and energy to things. You don't. In fact, it's far more, if you don't manage your anxiety, you're going to pour gas on the fire, and you're going to exacerbate all the problems and increase the number of them, the severity of them, and then it's going to require more of your time, okay? Decrease your anxiety. Learn to manage this, okay? And if you do that, you're going to be a better listener. You'll be able to be more mindful, be able to pause, you'll be able to listen, okay? Again, you listen with your mouth, okay? And try to be mindful. Try to be aware of when your ego's like, oh good, I think they're done. Now it's my turn, okay? So one skill that I use as a therapist that is just something, it's a learned thing, is being comfortable with silence. And being comfortable with being willing and being okay with just saying, hey, you okay? Because kids will go, yeah, I'm fine. And then if you just pause and you do in your mind, you're doing like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and pause, then they're like, well, and then they come out with it, okay? Ask good questions. Asking good questions is one of my go-to most effective communication skills and dealing with difficult situations. This is not only good to help the kid use their thinking brain and calm down. When you ask good questions, the reason for this is it engages their thinking brain instead of their emotional brain, and it can naturally calm and soothe their anxiety. Okay. I've also had some people report to me that when they ask good questions, they also feel less anxious, because they're having to engage their thinking brain as well, okay? Provide validation, okay? It's okay to feel that way. Hey, it's all right. You're fine. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be anxious, because I think sometimes we get wrapped up in this idea that it's not okay for them to be upset. Well, if they come from an upset situation, I want them to express that they're upset. If they come from a distressing home, I want them to feel comfortable expressing that distress to a comfortable parent, which is where this comes in. The acceptance, don't resist them. Sometimes we get attached to a certain outcome, right? We don't want our kids to be distressed, and that's understandable, but we don't want them to be distressed in a non-distressing situation. If the situation is distressing, then we need to not resist them. We need to just kind of like accept, like, hey, this is how it goes. And let's focus on the solutions rather than the problem, okay? Providing physical touch. Now, a really important note on this is that I've talked to a lot of kids. When they have a high conflict parent, there's usually control issues. And so kids will often exert control in other ways. Like, for example, they might be really picky eaters, man. I've seen so many situations where a kid has a narcissistic or borderline parent and they're just super picky eaters. So the reason why I'm talking about this is like giving them a hug might actually cause their anxiety to increase because they're feeling controlled. So when I feel, when I say physical touch, I'm talking like rub their back, rub their spine. If you rub their spine, it's soothing, calms the nervous system. Okay, scratch their back, scalp massage, maybe on their neck. A little bit of massage. Okay, maybe try to, especially if they're really escalated, maybe avoid giving them hugs and maybe just like give them a back rub. Okay, verbal reassurance. Hey, we're gonna make it. It's gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this. It's gonna be fine. You're okay. You're okay. It's gonna be all right. Okay, this is the most important one. The apologetic parent, notorious fixers. This actually disempowers the kid. I talk about this all the time. It's so important when it comes to your approaches to your children to instead of being a worried, protective approach, a resiliency and empowered approach. Okay, fixing them is not a resiliency approach. That is a worried approach. Okay, don't fix them. You're actually disempowering them. When you fix them, it's actually a barrier to validation. Validation is much more valuable to you than fixing. But I generally find fixers and parents that are the fixers are the ones that they're trying to soothe themselves. And sometimes it's difficult for them to admit that, but that's just what I really believe is true. I'm not trying to take a jab at people or blame them, just pointing out, hey, your fixing might be more about you so that you feel adequate as a parent. Okay, so all this stuff on the left, there's probably a few more things I could have put there, but it's a pretty decent list. This is stuff that you can do. Okay, stuff for the kids. Okay, physical movement for kids. Okay, like in EMDR, which is therapy model. Basically, the science behind it is if you stimulate the hemispheres of the brain alternately, it just soothes the nervous system, which is why walking, riding a bike, stuff like that it just naturally calms and soothes the nervous system. Okay, engage the senses. So with this, it's like you want to give them maybe some ice cream, something good to eat. Maybe listen to music. Do something to engage the senses. And the reason for this is because the more they're engaging in their senses and they're in the here and now, the less they're thinking about what happened, and the less they're thinking about what's going to happen. Okay, they're not looking at what's behind them, and they're not looking at what's in front of them. Try to help them engage the senses. Try to find sensory type things. Get a lava lamp. Get a disco ball. I don't care. Something that engages their senses. Okay. Changing the subject or redirecting. Okay. Well, it's important to do this stuff first. Okay. Get them to engage in a discussion about something else entirely. Like, what do you want to do for fun this weekend? What do you want for dinner? What did you do that was fun? When was the last time you talked to your friends? Get them to talk about something else other than the current situation. Things that they're interested in. Are you going to play any video games? Hey, let's go ride bikes. Okay. It's really important. And I'll get to this one. I'll do this one right now. If there's anything that as a family you do that's a fun activity, like if you can go on a bike ride or something together, great. That's perfect. Okay. Something creative. That's supposed to say creative, but I cranked this out pretty quick. But it's like if you have some of those coloring books, like sit down and color with them. Creative project with them. I knew a family that they actually played instruments together. Like they had a guitar and a bass and drums, and they just jammed as a family, which is super cool. Comfort items. Okay. The idea here is that if you can get a stuffed animal, maybe a blanket or something like that, and you just keep it at your home, it anchors them emotionally to hopefully a safe environment, so that when they are coming back in contact with those comfort items, it can help kind of soothe them and sort of get back in that mode. Okay, so some of my quick and dirty tips, tricks, and ideas on how to, because if you think of the brain, the child's brain, it's like certain neural pathways are going to be geared towards that franticness, that anxiety, the fight or flight type mode, right? And you want to re-engage the neural pathways, the positive ones. So try to think of things that are anchored to certain neural pathways, or certain ways of doing, or certain ways of being, and go in that direction. Okay? Thanks again for watching. Hopefully that's helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.